Baltimore County Historic Resources. We review and approve nominations to the Baltimore County Preliminary Landmarks List and comment on National Register nominations. Additionally, we review exterior alterations and developments impacting county historic districts and county landmarks, and are charged with evaluating submissions to the Baltimore County Historic Tax Credit Program. Would the commissioners please introduce themselves by name and county council district or representation? We can go in the order listed on the PowerPoint screen.
You can start, Rob.
Okay, I'm sorry. Rob Brennan, District 1.
Phoebe Evans Latosha, executive appointment.
John Holman, District 5.
Kutub Syed, District 4.
I think we lost order. Is
And
Scott
then
here?
it's no, Scott's not here, Ed's not here, Vince is not here, Mitch.
Okay, so that's me. Mitch Kelman, executive appointment. Thank you.
Wendy's not here, so Steve.
Steve Meyer, executive appointment.
Ray Scott, District 7.
All right, Chris is not here. All right, move on.
Okay, thank you all. Now let's please stand as we cite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Landmarks Preservation Commission operates under the authority, standards, and requirements of Title VII, Article 32 of the Baltimore County Code. We refer to the United States Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation as administered by the National Park Service. This is the accepted national standard for historic preservation projects. Our own Baltimore County Historic Preservation Design Guidelines directly reference and incorporate the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. We have important preservation issues to discuss and debate at each meeting. If you would like to make comments, please limit your comments to the specific preservation submission being reviewed. We ask for your assistance and understanding so that the discussions do not digress. As an additional comment, we can all agree that historic preservation is an important aspect of the quality of life and place that makes Baltimore County unique. As a commission, we seek to recommend significant buildings and places for landmark consideration to the County Council for their final vote. As commissioners, we serve on the commission due to our expertise, interest, and passion for historic buildings and places, and review submissions based solely on their merit. While we may disagree in discussion and voting, we continue to be a collegial body that respects each other personally and professionally. Caitlin, if we could provide an update on virtual meetings, the policies that we're working under right now.
Yeah, sure. So just a reminder for offering comments when your agenda item comes up. You can let myself, the host, know that you'd like to make a comment by selecting the hand raise button, which is next to your name, or you can send a chat to the host, letting them know that you wish to comment on a project. Additionally, all the information that is presented in this PowerPoint is just a summary. The commissioners receive meeting packets, meeting materials packet 1 week prior to the meeting for review. That includes a lot more information than is presented here. This information in this presentation is just an overview and summary, and it's just purely a visual to help keep the moving in an organized manner.
Caitlin, can you inform the members of the commission if there are any changes to the preliminary agenda?
There are no changes.
Thank you. Assuming that all commission members have read the minutes from last month's meeting, are there any proposed changes that may be addressed by the commission or commission members?
A motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Rob.
Rob? Looks like the motion carries and the minutes are approved. We have 3 consent agenda items, items 6, 10, and 11. Caitlin, can you read the staff recommendations?
Sure. All right. So the first item on the consent agenda is the Hager property at 216 Lichtstein Avenue in Lutherville County Historic District, which is a contributing resource. Their proposal is for installation of a 6-foot tall, 6-foot tall wood privacy fence that's just going along their rear property line. Staff recommendation is to vote for certificate of appropriateness. The next is the DeComo property at 202 West Seminary Avenue in Lutherville. It's a Part 2 tax credit approval for an incline replacement of the asphalt shingle roof. Again, staff's rec is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness. And the last item is the Clemens property at 122 Central Avenue in the Glendon County Historic District. It's a contributing structure. So it's a demolition of a deteriorated, non-contributing 1940s, 50s frame garage and a cinder block shed and a chain link fence. It's non-contributing because the period of significance for the Glendon Historic District ends at about 1915. So this was constructed after that, so it doesn't contribute to the history of the district, and that's why it's on the consent agenda. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak against the approval of any of these items? Or are there any members of the commission that would like to discuss these items?
I move we approve all 3.
I second.
Second, can we, instead of doing a roll call, can we all vote together on this? Everybody feel comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda items?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Looks like nobody against, so it looks like the items are approved and the motion passed. Thank you. Our first item for discussion and vote is public hearing on nomination to preliminary landmarks list. Kate, Caitlin, I'll turn this over to you to identify and give the background on this.
Right. Give me 1 second. Oh. All right, so this is the public hearing to add the Marlboro Lodge number 62 of the independent order of the Oddfellows Meeting Hall to the preliminary landmarks list. The nomination was submitted by the Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County. The property is owned by HIV Properties LLC. The building formerly was Cuomo's Antiques, but it's currently vacant. So nomination again was submitted by the Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County under criteria 1, which is association with an important person, group, event, or series of events of historical importance, and criteria 2, which is distinctive example of a particular architectural style or period. And the justifications that were included in the nomination for criteria 1 were 19th century development patterns of Baltimore County, including development of its industry, economy, and also the social movements of the era, and association with the independent order of the Oddfellows. And for criteria 2 is the sided fraternal building typical of the period. Just a note on landmark nominations. This process is conducted for all landmark nominations. Qualified staff conducts additional research beyond the information that's presented in the nomination in order to determine the significance and historical integrity of the nominated property and review the justifications presented in the submitted nomination form. For evaluating and applying the landmark criteria, staff and the commission utilize the Secretary of Interior Standards publication, How to Apply the National Register Criteria for Evaluation, which is outlined in the LPC's Historic Guidelines and Regulations, which are available on the LPC's website. To be eligible, a property must demonstrate significance in the terms of one or more of the 5 broad criteria, which our criteria are derived from the National Register's criteria, but also must retain physical integrity to convey that significance. Historic integrity is based on 7 aspects as defined by the National Park Service, which are location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. Essentially meaning that properties must have not been substantially altered since a person or group used the property. And architectural significant properties must retain the majority of the features that characterize their type.
Video.
Located at 10579 York Road is the former meeting hall of Marlboro Lodge number 62 of Marlboro Lodge number 122 of the Independent, or 123 of the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows. It's presently situated on a parcel that is slightly larger than 1/8 of an acre on the east side of York Road, just south of Shore Road and north of Hillside Drive. It is a 2-story frame structure with a 1-story concrete block storefront addition that sits right on York Road. The frame portion of the building was originally constructed in 1873 in a vernacular style. It has a rectangular footprint and sits on a raised foundation of uncoarse local stone and is 3 bays wide by 3 bays deep. It has a front end open gable roof that is covered with a standing seam metal roof. In 2001, the present owner removed the vinyl or aluminum siding, exposing the original Dutchwood siding. The 1-story concrete block storefront addition was added onto the front of the frame structure around the late 1930s. The windows on the 2nd story of the frame portion are original to the 1873 structure. However, all but one of the windows on the 1st story of the frame portion are replacements, most likely from the 1930s when the 1st floor residence was renovated. The area around the property is surrounded by various commercial structures that date from the mid to late 20th century. An auto service center is located on the adjacent property to the north, and a large pharmacy is located on the east and south side. The site is covered with paved and graveled surfaces and is accessed from York Road on its north side. The lot is small and has little space around it. The building is presently vacant. However, it was an antique store for the last 32 years. Cockeysville is named for the Cockey family, whose earliest ancestor, Thomas Cockey, settled in the Limestone Valley in 1727. Thomas Cockey's home was Taylor's Hall, which originally was located near Texas, Maryland, off of Padonia Road. Joshua F. Cockey was the first primary landowner in the area. The town is strategically located a half-mile east of the Beaver Dam marble quarries. Marble quarrying began in this region in 1780 and fully developed between 1815 and 1829. Shortly thereafter, the area's abundant limestone deposits were quarried. In 1804, the first limestone was burned in nearby Texas, Maryland. Most of the work at the marble quarry was done by hand and then carted to the train stations at Texas and Cockeysville. The quarry supplied marble to Baltimore and Washington, D.C., including marble for the columns for the Capitol building, the post office buildings, and Baltimore City Hall. The early 19th century saw a great change in the town's rural character. Before the construction of the Baltimore and Susquehanna Railroad, Cockeysville was composed of primarily of large farms with buildings scattered over the landscape. In 1838, the Baltimore and Susquehanna Railroad officially opened, passing through the town of Cockeysville for travel from Baltimore to Maryland-Pennsylvania line. The construction of the railroad through the town center enabled Cockeysville to grow into a larger community that included a wide array of commercial interests for the town of its size. In 1854, the Baltimore and Susquehanna, York and Maryland, York and Cumberland, and Susquehanna Railroad companies were consolidated into the Northern Central Railroad Company, one of the largest railroad companies in Maryland. Thus, its location near the junction of the York Road and the Northern Central Railroad enabled Cockeysville to grow continually through the latter half of the 19th century. In 1877, commercial properties in Cockeysville included a blacksmith shop, a carriage manufacturer, 2 merchants, and a marble works. By 1881, the small town's population had grown to 270 people located at this important intersection. By the end of the 19th century, the town of Cockeysville and its vicinity had established a flourishing trade industry supported by agricultural mills and marble quarries. Compared to other towns in the vicinity, Cockeysville could have been considered rather urban in its character. Also, the founding family, the Cockeys, were important in the town's development throughout the 19th century. In addition to being one of the founders of the Sherwood Church, Joshua Cockey II, also known as Judge Cockey, funded the construction of the local train station and accompanying commercial buildings. Joshua F. Cockey III, his son, was an important civic leader in the town, establishing a general store around 1860, in addition to the bank that he later built. He also oversaw the construction of many of the original 19th century dwellings along York Road that comprised the town of Cockeysville. The land that 10759 York Road is situated on was once owned by Mrs. Frances Dye Owings Taylor. Mrs. Taylor was the daughter of Colgate Dye Owings and Thomas Cockey Owings. In 1808, Mrs. Taylor inherited a large tract of land from her bachelor uncle, Captain Thomas Cockey Dye of Taylor's Hall. Her inherited land holdings included Lot 6 of Captain Dye's estate, which comprised of several hundred acres, including land that stretched to the east of the corner of Warren Factory Road, present-day Warren Road, and Bosley Road, just outside the Warren Mill. Her land is identified on the 1857 Sydney map as Miss Owings and Mrs. Taylor. Mrs. Taylor's holdings also included marble quarries in Cockeysville. She donated the marble for the construction of the Washington Monument in Baltimore City. In the 1840s, she also donated the land for the construction of the Sherwood Episcopal Church, located off of York and Sherwood Roads in Cockeysville. Mrs. Taylor died in 1870. She had no children, and her husband had died sometime before her. And she is buried at Sherwood Episcopal Church. Mrs. Taylor was generous to many civic organizations as well as to her family and tenants, which was outlined in her will. The executors of her estate were Joshua F. Cockey Sr., which is also Judge Cockey, and Richard Giddings. In 1871, they advertised for the sale of her 400-acre real estate holdings, which were divided up into 13 lots ranging from 4 to 120 acres. Some of the lots already had buildings on them, like her farm, which was leased to various tenants. The property at 10759 York Road was part of lot number 4, which contained 17 acres and fronted the York Turnpike. The public auction took place at 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 20th, 1871, at the Exchange Room in Baltimore City. Joshua F. Cockey Jr., and just so you know, junior and senior, because in the real estate or the land records, they're referring to the father as senior and the son as junior, because I know that John F. Cockey Jr. is also John F. Cockey III. So just so you know that senior refers to the father and junior refers to the son, just for clarification. So John F. Cockey Jr. Was the highest bidder for lot number 4 and for lot number 1. In a deed dated January 11th, 1872, it states that Cockey Jr. purchased lot number 4 of Mrs. Taylor's estate, which contains 17 acres fronting on the York Turnpike, paying $2,294.53. No structures were mentioned in the sales ad, whereas other lots mentioned improvements on the properties, including dwellings, storehouses, fine groves, or woods. So it is assumed that no buildings were on the property at the time when it came under Joshua Cockey Jr.'s ownership. In March of 1873, Joshua F. Cockey Jr. granted and conveyed part of Lot 4 of Mrs. Taylor's estate to John Atkinson for the sum of $600. The property contained around 30,000 square feet, which is roughly under an acre, 3/4 of an acre. The small sum of $600 is indicative. It lets us know that there were probably no structures on the property when it was sold by Cockey Jr. And then in August of 1873, Atkinson granted and conveyed part of the property conveyed to him by Cockey Jr. to the Marlboro Lodge number 123 of the Independent Order of Odd Fellows for the sum of $100. The Marlboro Lodge number 123 of the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows was chartered in 1871. Again, here, the small sum of $100 tells us that there were no structures on the property. So the building was constructed sometime between August and October of 1873 by the members of Marlboro Lodge number 123. I could not find any evidence of the structure. The structure was constructed by a member of the Cockey family. A news article in the Baltimore Sun from October 15th, 1873 describes the dedication of a new Oddfellows Hall at Cockeysville on Saturday, October 14th, 1873. It was dedicated as Marlboro Lodge number 62 of the Oddfellows. The article mentions a hall of neat architecture, 56 by 28 feet dimensions, and cost $2,500 to construct. The building committee consisted of Dr. J.W. Hawkins, John T. Riley, S.K. Griffith, W.A. Tracy, and S.U. Gent. And the present frame structure has very similar dimensions of those listed in this article from 1873. On the 1877 atlas, the building appears for the first time, but is labeled as a residence with Wesley Knight and G.W. Hubbard as occupants. G.W. Hubbard is listed as a carriage manufacturer, and Wesley Knight was a blacksmith, according to census records. I apologize, oh, there we go. It was being a little slow. Although the structure was built and dedicated in 1873, it was first identified as a Oddfellows Hall on the 1898 atlas and again on the 1915 atlas. So the Independent Order of the Oddfellows is an international organization with a sovereign lodge based in the United States. The earliest printed record of the Oddfellows Lodge appears in a reference to 1748 lodge meeting at the Globe Tavern in England. This lodge was numbered 9, suggesting that there were at least 9 associated lodges at the time. Other written evidence suggests that the Oddfellows were an organization known originally as the Ancient Order of Bucks, which thrived in England in the 18th century and had as its emblem 3 bucks with their antlers intertwined. Regardless of the organization's founding, the order eventually migrated to America from England. The first Shakespeare Lodge formed in New York City in 1806. The Independent Order of Oddfellows was established in 1819 in Baltimore with the founding of the Washington Lodge No. 1. As a member of the London Oddfellow Lodge in 1804, English immigrant Thomas Wildey, along with 4 other English immigrants, organized the Washington Lodge on April 26, 1819. Interestingly, the Baltimore Order and the New York Order did not know of each other's existence for a number of years. Wildey traveled throughout the United States to set up lodges of the newly formed fraternity. By the time of his death in 1861, there were more than 200,000 members in 42 states. The primary activities of this organization are to visit the sick, relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphan. To aid the goal of burying the dead, the Oddfellow lodges that held status amongst the order or their communities often had cemeteries associated with their lodges. Other forms of aid involved helping those in need by providing services such as purchasing groceries, a quart of wood, or visiting a nurse to care for those who are ill. The symbol of the Oddfellows is three unbroken chain links, often featuring the letters L or FL and T, which stand for friendship, love, and truth. Many join to participate in social activities associated with the lodge, such as meetings, dinners, and dances. The Marlboro Lodge number 123 was founded and chartered in 1871. Marlboro Lodge number 62 was constructed in 1873 and was not an official chartered lodge of the Independent Order of the Oddfellows. And as a result, there is no official records of this building as a lodge that held by the Grand Lodge of Maryland. From a directory of subordinate lodges of the Independent Order of Oddfellows from 1913, there is no mention of a Marlboro Lodge number 62. The 62 that's listed on here is a Midland Lodge in Midland, Maryland. Most of these smaller lodges were built with private funds and used for private meetings or for residential or commercial renters to generate income. These smaller lodges is just one of probably over 400 in the Maryland jurisdiction. In the 1933 Sanborn fire insurance map, it shows the building most likely in its original form. I couldn't find any other images showing it before the concrete block addition was on the front. So the fire insurance map shows us a 2-story frame structure with a composition roof, which means an early type of asphalt roof, and shows a 1-story full width porch with a shingle or metal roof, and a 1-story frame rear addition that also has a shingle or metal roof. The property was owned by the Marlboro Lodge number 123 until 1938, when it was sold to a Mr. Judson H. Sinkendiver. Mr. Sinkendiver was born in West Virginia in 1875. He graduated from the Maryland College of Pharmacy, which is now the School of Pharmacy at University of Maryland, in 1897. In 1898, he purchased his first drugstore at Wilkins Avenue, Peyton Street in Baltimore, which he sold and then purchased another drugstore at 36th Street and Elm Avenue in Hampton. In 1905, he sold his store in Hampton and joined the H.K. Mulford Company, representing them in Washington, D.C. until 1911. In that year, became the sales manager for the National Vaccine and Antitoxin Institute in Washington, D.C., traveling to every state in the Union and parts of Mexico and Canada, selling antitoxins and vaccines. From 1915 to 1918, he acted in the same capacity for Lutherville Laboratories, E.R. Squibb and Sons, and from 1918 to 1920 was associated with the Calco Chemical Company and their representative in Washington, D.C., selling pharmaceuticals to the U.S. government. In 1921, he purchased the Viaduct Chemical Company of New York, which manufactured drug specialties and cosmetics. In 1929, he moved his laboratories to Baltimore and moved it to Cockeysville in the 1930s under the name of Judson Laboratories. The 1946 Sanborn map shows the one-story concrete block storefront addition for the first time. It's described as having 12-foot ceilings and a composition roof. It shows windows on the side elevations and shows access to the basement. In addition, a metal detached auto house or garage was added to the property. It is likely that the block storefront addition was added sometime after the 1938 conveyance to Judson Sink and Diver. The structure is still identified, the frame structure is still identified as the Oddfellows Meeting Hall, despite the fact that it was sold to Mr. Sink and Diver in 1938. There's nothing in the deed transfer that indicated that the Oddfellows still utilize the second story as a meeting hall. But it is assumed that it ceased sometime around this time or shortly thereafter. The 1940 census listed Sink and Diver that he lived in Cockeysville, where he owned his home. It valued around $8,000, which is about $152,000 in today's money. His occupation was listed as a druggist. Mr. Sink and Diver owned the property until 1958. The property changed hands again in 1966 and 1974. In 1974, Angelo Chiazza purchased the property and opened a restaurant called Angelo's Carryout. Mr. Chiazza sold the property to Felix and Margaret Cuomo on April 4th, 1989, where it was used as an antique store until the property was sold in May of this year. It's presently vacant. And records indicated that Mr. Sink and Diver and his wife resided in the building and operated a drugstore out of the concrete block addition, which was most likely added between 1938 and 1946. The block addition is a very typical design of a vernacular single-fronted commercial building. It exhibits a stepped gable and a recessed canted center entry and has a symmetrical facade. Around the same time as the block addition, several interior renovations on the first floor residence also resulted in some exterior alterations. There's interior evidence on the first floor of the structure, as well as evidence on the exterior that tells us this. The interior finishes all date to late 1930s, 40s, including the flooring, bathroom fixtures, trim, interior doors, which tells us that they probably happened around the same time as the concrete block addition was added. In addition, the high ceiling was lowered, most likely to make room for utilities like plumbing or electrical. And you can see in these photos on the slide of the same doorway on either side, where you can see there's a big difference in the drop ceiling. So lowering the ceiling interfered with the tall windows, the original 19th century windows, which resulted in the removal of all but one original 19th century window on the first floor. The only original window that's left on the first floor is located on the south elevation, all the way on the west side, closest to the concrete block addition. Smaller 6/6 wood sashes were installed, and the space was enclosed and covered with matching Dutch siding. You can see where the patches are made on the exterior, and it depends on your screen. It might be more noticeable depending on your screen and the lighting. In addition, there was one window that was added on the north elevation. On the south elevation, there's a couple bathroom windows that were added, and a window for a kitchen that was added that were an original. On the second floor of the frame structure, the building contains an open meeting hall with vaulted ceilings. While the second floor has integrity and shows evidence of the 19th century meeting hall space, interior spaces cannot be used when evaluating buildings for landmark designations. The landmark designations and the LPC's purview are only on the exterior structures, not the interior or use of a building. There are no protections on interior spaces, which is why interiors cannot be used as part of landmark evaluation. So there are no early photos of the front of the structure that I could find. Again, the Sanborn map from 1933 is probably the only image that I could find that shows the structure without its concrete block addition on the front. I did find some photos of the building during the construction of the old Cockeysville Library in 1961. You can see that the metal roof is present here, which means that it was probably added sometime after 1946 and before 1961, since the 1946 Sanborn map tells us that it had a composition roof, which has been an early type of asphalt roofing material. In addition, the horizontal siding appears to be wider and doesn't appear to have a novelty drop that appears in the Dutch siding. So this means it could be either some aluminum siding or asbestos siding, which would be typical of that time. And you can see that the concrete block storefront is unpainted. And then the two half baths that are on the first floor were not added yet because the windows are not in the in the south elevation. The addition of the storefront to the structure and the shift of the building's use to commercial coincided with the increase of commercial development of this section of York Road. Cockeysville and other towns in the Limestone Valley underwent vast changes between the 1930s and 1960s, when there was a shift from the industrial dominance development period to the modern period of suburbanization. This was kind of a common trend in Maryland, in the United States, before and after World War II. And Cockeysville is no different. The onset of the automobile and other modes of transportation, construction of better roads, GI housing bills, all contributed to the growth of this area just before and after World War II. Many large and small residential developments sprang up surrounding the York Road area. As a result, all along York Road has become one heavily developed commercial corridor spanning from Towson to Cockeysville. During the late half of the 20th century, the influx of industry, the construction of I-83, and the widening of York Road combined to turn Cockeysville into this busy urban suburban community. Now moving on to evaluation of the structure, and just a refresher, bringing back on these are the criteria that the nomination was submitted for and its justification. And again, just to be eligible, property must demonstrate significance in terms of one or more of those 5 criteria and must also retain physical integrity to convey that significance. Okay, so most buildings change over time, and those changes can gain significance on their own. And when reviewing nominations for landmark designations in the National Register, we have to look at a building as a whole, not just a smaller portion of the structure. National Register Bulletin, how to apply the National Register criteria for evaluation that the LPC can use for technical guidance, states that parts of buildings such as interiors, facades, or wings are not eligible independent of the rest of the existing structure. The structure has to be looked at holistically, not just the 19th century frame portion, which was the only portion that was used as a justification in the nomination. Therefore, it doesn't qualify. A property that is significant for its historic association is eligible if it retains the essential physical features that made up its character of appearance during its period of association with the important social trend, or its association in this case with the Oddfellows. In addition to be eligible, properties must not only retain their essential physical features, but these features must be visible enough to convey their significance. If a property's exterior is covered by an addition, or else, if property's exterior is covered by an addition or otherwise obscured from view, a property does not qualify because it does not retain the visual quality necessary to convey historic or architectural significance. In this case, the former meeting hall's original 19th century appearance has been concealed by its 20th century addition on the front and the adjacent commercial properties that are all on the property lines. Any of its 19th century structure is obscured from view, except a portion of its second floor, which can be viewed from the public right away. It does not have any distinctive exterior characteristics that would make it identifiable as a meeting house for the Oddfellows from other vernacular structures of the time. There are no date stones or signage depicting any of the Oddfellows symbols. The use of local stone in the foundation, including the marble and Butler stone, is not uncommon in this area of Baltimore County and can be found on earlier and later constructed buildings. Yes, the structure has original siding and several original windows. However, it is not enough to distinguish this building as a meeting hall from other vernacular structures of the time. Any original 19th century characteristics on the primary facade have been covered up by the storefront addition. The primary facade being one of the most important elevations of a structure. The property does not retain its setting to convey its association with the development of Cockeysville during the 19th century. The property is surrounded on all sides by commercial structures that date from the early to mid 20th century and later. The 19th century structure is displaced from other late 19th century structures in Cockeysville. The period of significance for the entire structure should be placed around 1938 to 1940 when the storefront addition was added. The late 1930s construction date of the addition or early 1940s places it outside of the main period of development that characterizes the most notable 19th century structures in Cockeysville. Lastly, the entire structure has more of an association with its commercial appearance use in the 1930s to 1960s commercial development of Cockeysville than that of the late 19th century former meeting hall of the Oddfellows. And after reviewing the nomination and conducting additional research, staff has determined that the Marlboro Lodge number 62 of the Independent Order of the Oddfellows is not eligible for the Baltimore County Landmarks list under the submitted justifications for criteria 1 and 2. Because although the property does have an historic association with the Independent Order of the Oddfellows, the structure no longer retains enough integrity to convey its association with the Oddfellows and its former use as a meeting house. Since landmark designation only has protections on the exterior, the interior cannot be used in this evaluation. The second floor meeting hall cannot be used as evidence because the LPC have no purview over interior spaces. And the nomination failed to look at the entire structure and other aspects of its history. The 19th century exterior has been absorbed by the 1930s storefront addition and by the other commercial properties around it. The structure can be more associated with its 1930s commercial appearance and use and the development of Cockeysville in the years before and after World War II than that of the meeting hall of the Oddfellows. And with that, I am finished with my presentation. So right now, we're gonna invite the owner of the property and nominator, and then ask the public for comments. So I'm going to, give me 1 second.
Caitlin, can I interrupt really quick?
Sure, absolutely.
I may have missed it. Did we give the recommendation citing the county code? May have done
I have that on the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on the, after the public testimony, it's on the next slide. All right, so I am going to invite Mr. Brandon O'Rourke, the owner of the property, to address the commission. Mr. O'Rourke, you're now unmuted.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon O'Rourke. I'm the owner of the property at 10759 York Road, and I am asking the commission to decline the nomination. I own the business next door, Hunt Valley Eurocar. Since opening in 2013, our business has grown from 2 employees servicing 4 to 5 cars a day to 10 employees servicing 20 or more cars a day. As we've grown, we've expanded the parking to its maximum on our lot. We have 42 spaces available with 10 employees, customer cars dropping off, picking up, tow-ins, waiting for parts, etc. There's rarely any space to be had. We often have employees parking on the public parking alcove just north of us. The 10759 York Road had been on the market for over a year when we purchased it in March of 2021 with the intention of removing the building to expand our parking. At that time, a title search was completed to confirm there were no historical designations or encumbrances on the property, and none were found. In April, I called and emailed the Historic Society of Baltimore County for any information related to the property with no notable response. A search of their online archives netted no images of the property at any point in its history or mention of it as a property of significance. I saw no reason to think that we couldn't proceed as planned. So in preparation to remove the building, I hired a restoration specialist, Mr. Peter Allen of Towson, to determine the cost and feasibility of deconstructing the building with the intention of rebuilding it at another location at a later date. We removed the vinyl siding to verify the condition of the original siding, and we removed the interior drywall and plaster to confirm the condition of the structural components. Mr. Allen has done a full written analysis of the property, style, structure, and condition, as well as come up with a plan to label, remove, and store the salvageable pieces for later use. To date, approximately $20,000 has been spent in planning and demolition. Upon receiving the notification from the Preservation Alliance, it was the first time I was made aware of its past as an Oddfellows Hall. At that time, I reached out to the Oddfellows of Maryland and spoke with the Grand Secretary, Laura Teet. She stated that the lodge was one of over 400 in the state of Maryland at one time and was of no significance to them. She assured me that they would not have sold it if any great events had occurred there. At my encouragement, she agreed to ask the members if anyone recalled any significance to this lodge. She confirmed via email and a letter that I submitted to the county that it was discussed by the board and there was, quote, no historical significance by our order to this lodge or its members. Because of that, I don't think the building meets criteria 1, as the associated group doesn't believe it to be significant. In Peter Allen's analysis, as well as the county's that was just given, there's no distinctive architectural style. It's very typical for its age and location. Therefore, I don't believe it meets criteria 2. I acknowledge the building is a neat old building. I like it, but its current location is between 3 block-walled commercial structures that don't match its style or create the feeling of anything historic. As it stands, it's not ideal for any type of business due to its limited parking and difficult access to and from York Road. And as the current owner, it's not usable for any function of my business. Unfortunately, I need parking, and this building occupies the majority of an already small lot that we bought to park cars. I'm respectfully asking the commission to decline the nomination.
Thank you for your testimony. I thought you were making a brief statement, and I didn't mean to seem like I was cutting you off, but so I hope you don't think I was doing that. I thought you were finished.
Nope.
Again, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right, next, we're going to move on to Anne. Just give me 1 second, Anne. I'm going to pull up your presentation, your small presentation. Give me 1 second. All right, Anne, you're unmuted.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. And first of all, I just wanted to thank the commission, of course, of all the work that you all do. But also I wanted to thank Lisa Jensen Wingate, who has helped us with portions of our nomination and putting some of our research together. And also, I'm especially thankful for the letters of support. I'm not sure if Caitlin, you're going to show that later on, but letters of support from the Oddfellows Lodge in Towson, as well as descendants of Joshua Cockey as well. So very grateful for those letters. I'm not sure if there are any more. Hello?
Sorry, it's just some feedback from.
Okay,
something.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
And so just wanted to thank those folks. And if you could just the next slide, please. So one thing that's very easy to imagine is the Oddfellows Hall in its original context. When you're looking at the hill from Marble Hill in the back of the property, you can still see the silhouette of the green hills and really have a good sense of how things were back when Joshua Cockey and others after the Civil War founded Cockeysville. And again, our criteria that we initially mentioned is based upon the industrial development of the Cockeysville area, but also in terms of how much there still is there in terms of the view shed and original context. I know there was some mention made of that you really can't see that it's a 19th century building, and there's some issues with that. But especially from the back portion, you can really see how that is not the case. You can still see elements of how the building would have stood its an original setting. And even within the front context, it is a commercial development at this point. So it's still part of the streetscape. Next one, please. So again, I apologize. I didn't have, thank you, Caitlin, for having original photos of the interior of the property, because obviously we weren't able to have that, but this is just a sense of a typical interior of a Oddfellows Hall in the area. But again, seeing the photos was very nice of the interior. And just want to go back a little bit to Joshua Cockey. So I do appreciate your research on that portion of the history of the building, but wanted to add two things to that. One is one of the interesting things about the Oddfellows is that they were the first fraternal order that actually added women to their orders. So that they were called the Rebeccas at one point. And again, I'm not quite sure in terms of the Oddfellows Hall on Marble Hill, but that's a part of the very important history of the Oddfellows is their addition of women into their fraternal order as a separate group. I'm sorry?
It's just feedback for.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. Any LPC members, please keep yourself muted so we don't have any feedback. Sorry.
Right, but if anyone has any questions, then you're welcome to. add those in. But also one thing that I did want to mention too is the importance of the history of the marble industry in the area and how this hall was very specific to that industry. There were very many members of both the general class as well as the managerial class of the marble industry who were participants there. And as Caitlin had mentioned, a large part is the civic history. And part of what's important too is this is the one edifice that we do have from Joshua Cockey that was part of his civil endeavors. We obviously have the bank and a handful of other buildings left from his legacy, but this is the one building that has an association to the civic side of his works during the period. So that is significant as well. And next slide, please. And again, I won't go too much into this portion since that's already been covered in terms of the location. And one thing that the only thing I did want to mention here, even though it's not a photo of the Sanborn map, is that the current building, except obviously for the 1930s or early 40s edition, still has its original configuration. So that is one thing I do want to mention here. Next slide, please. I do want to go back to the topic of the addition in the front. And one thing that I do want to bring up is, again, even though we did focus on the 19th century building and its history, its association to both the area and different figures in history, one thing the commission can consider are things that we did not initially focus on. So the commission does have the ability to go forth with a nomination based upon other criteria, even though those weren't the things that we focused on. The commission may find those factors more important in terms of the commercial development in the 1930s and 40s and beyond. So again, in terms of our interest, we in an ideal world, of course, we'd like to save both portions, but for us, and I think it's also important for the commission to consider, you can consider both histories or just one history. So there is the potential of just putting protections on the 19th century portion of the building, but the commission can also choose to look at the considerations for the addition along with the 19th century portion that we had emphasized. So the commission can choose to emphasize other things than we have. And I did want to add, I was very interested because I did not realize the association to our vaccine history of the early days, which is actually very timely for issues that we're dealing with right now. So I do want to thank Caitlin for bringing that up. And again, we're by no means opposed to looking at both parts, both the 19th century history as well as the commercial or early mid, I should say, history of the facade of the building. Next slide, please.
Okay, and just for like time purposes, we're coming up in an hour and we have a full floor.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off. I just like try to speed it up some.
Sure. So again, just in terms of proportionality as well as the original outline as was in the Sanborn map, we still do have that for the 19th century portion. So next slide, please. And again, just going back to my previous point in terms of the streetscape, the commission can choose to also include the front addition into a nomination if they find it to be more significant or equally significant, I should say, to the 19th century history of both architectural history as well as history to the founding of Cockeysville and the institutional history of the area, industrial and institutional history of the area. Next, please. And I apologize, I didn't have a very good slide of the full back. We weren't really able to do that from the back of the hill. That wasn't on the property. So just wanted to, I have another slide coming up where you can see a little bit more of the German siding there. Next, please. So again, Caitlin did mention this, the standing seam roof that's there. And again, the proportionality of the gabled vent as well. Next slide, please. And in terms of the windows, again, with some original windows as well as some windows that most likely were there in the 1930s, the commission can consider both of those as well. But they are wood windows that are still in good shape, and it's a rare find nowadays to have that as well. Next slide, please. And going back to the association to the quarry history, the marble quarry history, we do both have the marble rubble foundation, as well as, and I apologize, the slide may not be the best, but marble stairs as well on the side. So again, emblematic of the lodge's founding, as well as its development in terms of the association of the history of the marble industry in the area and Marble Hill. Next slide, please. And for the most part, again, the historic frame structure retains its architectural integrity, and there may be the issue, again, going back to the front, but as I want to reiterate once more, is the commission does have the ability, if they so choose, to focus as well on the commercial history from the 1930s on as well. Next slide, please. So again, just the same, this is pretty much just another reiteration of what I just mentioned in terms of the German siding, the angles, the local quarry, the local marble that we use from the local quarries, the original chimney, the round wooded livered attic vent, as well as the double hung windows, the 6/6 windows, and notably also the tall structure expresses the elevated ceiling heights of the interior spaces. Next, please. So again, in 1871, the Oddfellows Hall still stands atop Marble Hill. Its characteristic wood German siding, rounded louvered vent, standing seam tin roof with snow eagles and narrow brick chimney. The windows, the stone foundation still evoke the community support. The community support lodge erected shortly after the Civil War by Joshua Cockey, one of the town's founders, merchants, and developers. But again, as I do want to reiterate, that the commission can consider, if they find that equally or more significant, the 1930s addition and the history of the commercial development of York Road, as well as mentioned, the vaccine history.
Actually, Anne, since your nomination was only submitted for the Oddfellows Hall, the commission can't include other parts of the building because that is not what staff didn't evaluate the structure based on that. Like I did a lot of research on the frame portion, not so much on the concrete block portion. That's why like parts of buildings can't be landmarked or designated independently of the entire structure. So they wouldn't be able to include the concrete block addition because it wasn't included in the original nomination.
Well, but again, the commission does have the ability to not add that portion if they so chose and focus on the 19th century, but I think there was quite a bit of research that was done on the 1930s edition, the pharmacy edition, that could potentially qualify. And if we had known that would have been, you know, more what the commission was looking for, we would have done more research there as well.
Again, the nomination was only for the frame portion, not the concrete block addition was left off of the nomination. So.
And next slide, please. I think that might be the last one.
That's the last one.
So again, we'd like the commission to consider the nomination, and again, very grateful for the support from the Oddfellows Lodge in Towson, as well as descendants of the Cockey family. But again, we would, if given more information, we would have definitely focused more on the 1930s edition. And again, are very open to doing that as well, if that could be something that could be considered in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. Caitlin, do we have anybody else who is on to testify?
Give me 1 second while I get the PowerPoint back up. the side.
Hey, Mitch, this is Rob. How best to move this along, huh?
Yeah, I want to, I think Caitlin has something else.
Yeah, sorry.
You
Sorry
trying
for
to,
the delay. It takes me a while to, since I'm doing all the virtual stuff myself, trying to get all the,
I want to make sure that, that all the commission members see everything.
so, oops, that's the wrong slide. Part of, whoa, what is happening? All right, there we go. All right, so I have a few previously submitted public testimony. I'm going to go through these really quick, and then we will ask if there's anyone who has not submitted any previously submitted that will talk, and then their limit should be really brief to keep this on track, under 2 minutes. So first we have from Victoria Powell. Her letter says, please add to Cockeysville, Oddfellows Hall, to Marlboro Lodge to the Register of Historic Buildings. It is worthy of such a designation as represents life in a small town in northern Baltimore County. Long ago, so many of the buildings disappeared in the 1960s and 70s. It could be used for office space or a small museum about the town. Maybe a Cockeysville Historical Society could be established to display photos and items relevant to the area. There are so many possibilities. It would take a landlord or organization to fundraise the restoration. There are families and organizations in the area that have items that would be donated for display. Folks are afraid to donate to the Baltimore County Historical Society due to recent auctions that took place to make room for county offices that were moved into the almshouse building. The Marlboro Lodge may refer to Cockeysville Marble, which contributed to the economy of the area. There must have been enough wealth generated for leisure time activities such as being a lodge member. I wonder if the late John McGrain of Towson had collected or taken such photos. A lodge could become a source of pride or income for the community and a chance for seniors to contribute as volunteers. Next, I have Ann Neal from Towson. She says, I'm writing to encourage the preservation of the Oddfellows Hall and Marlboro Lodge and York Road in Cockeysville, particularly along retail-oriented York Road. I think it is important to recognize and preserve the history. Next, I have Linda Walter, who's a distant descendant of the Cockey family. She says, dear committee members, please allow me to, by thanking you for your volunteer service and effort to preserve the threads of human endeavor from past to present in your communities. Your work makes it possible to retain the valuable connections across multiple generations of vastly different historical time periods. More specifically, I'm writing in regard to your consideration of the nomination of the Cockeysville Oddfellows Hall, Marlboro Lodge for historic designation. I wish to register my support for the nomination. Jocko F. Cockey III, who was instrumental in the development of the flourishing town of Cockeysville, felt so strongly about the compassionate service of the Oddfellows to those members of the community in need. He devoted a portion of his family's land and personally paid for the construction of the hall at its location. The value of this gift to the community cannot be underestimated. Many of the residents' lives were touched by his gifts and the tradition of caring and a willingness to help and be helped by one's neighbors to put in motion. It is a tradition that endures to this day and one that's worth perpetuating, as government provided services can never take place of family and friends with a strong enduring ethic of coming together to help each other. Today it is time for the community to come together to help this historic property survive challenging times. This site is a testament to the area's cultural history and shared values, and the building with its original German boarding speaks to the strength and resilience. I'm sad to think that it might sacrifice this important reminder of who we are and who we want to become in order to gain a small number of parking spaces. Well, once the structure is gone, I'll not be able to get back, no matter how desperately we may wish to do so in the future, I highly doubt that parking spaces will ever afford a rallying point for the community or install a sense of pride among the residents or inspire all visitors. Thus, it is my deep desire that you look favorably upon the nomination. The next is from Becky Gerber, Cockeysville, Maryland. I'm writing to express support for historic designation of Oddfellows Hall, Marble Lodge of Cockeysville. The Lodge House, which was contributed to the community by founding Cockey family, is currently one of 6 original Cockey structures situated within 1/2 block radius of Old Cockeysville. The simple colonial revival wooden structure has brought the sense of history, cultural interest, and architectural and civic beauty to the Cockeysville streetscape for over 150 years. I remember it clearly with its 2nd story red tin roof and tall pane windows rising well above the other rooftops some 50 years ago. When I was a small child, I thought that it as a risk of destruction for a small amount of parking, I find mind-boggling. I ask that you please honor your commitment to historical preservation, to recognize the historical significance of the Marble Lodge and the contribution it brings to the local community by adding it to the preliminary landmarks list. And then I have Jean Lesher, the Grand Master of the Towson Lodge, saying I'm writing this letter in support of the Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County's effort to nominate the Marlboro Lodge and Cockeysville for historic preservation, placed in the Baltimore County's preliminary landmarks list. The Marble Lodge occupied the building in question from November of 1871 to the mid-1900s. The lodge was an important part of a smaller community known as Marble Heights for many years. The building was a livable, living historic reminder of the early years of Cockeysville. I urge the commission to be in favor of the nomination. Additionally, I have from Janti Shoga, I'm ready to express my support for the historic designation of the Oddfellows, Marble Lodge and Cockeysville. I hope this historic structure will not be demolished. Thank you for your consideration. I'm Bonnie Renner. Thank you for considering the Oddfellows Lodge of Cockeysville for landmark status. I would like to express my support for the landmark designation. As a descendant of the Cockey family, of course, the property bears special meaning for me. More importantly, it is a reminder of our past as community. Historical sites such as this one give younger generations a tangible window to the past, makes history come to life, and reminds us of efforts of real people working to help others in their community long ago. Learning about the past helps us understand where we are now and how we got here, and hopefully helps us to inform decisions about where we want to go, the society moving forward. Let's make the choice to honor the past and keep this precious piece of history intact and inspire current and future generations. And the last one, the Marble Lodge Grand Secretary. After continued investigations into our records regarding the Marble Lodge, we have not found any information that the lodge or lodge building located at 10759 York Road, Cockeysville, has any historical significance of independent order of the Oddfellows. The lodge was just one of over 400 that were in Maryland jurisdiction between 1840 and 1950. Most lodges were used for private meetings, residential and commercial rentals to generate income. As the property was sold upon the closing of the lodge and not kept in our inventory for future use by another lodge, indicates to us that there were many lodges in the general area, and this lodge building offered no special in regards to construction or legal status of any member of the local community. As we are proud of our heritage and the fact that the Oddfellows originated in Baltimore at the Seven Stars Tavern in 1819, as stated, there were over 400 lodges at one point located in far western Maryland to the eastern shore of Maryland, and everywhere in between. Lodges had held status amongst the order. Communities usually provided graveyards for elder care for their members. Again, we are proud of our order, just as the many other fraternal orders are theirs, and we offer some basic principles to the community and each other.
Is that all the
yes, so that was all the pre-submitted ones. And if there's any members from the public that have not already submitted any that would like to speak, either hit your raise your hand icon or write in this.
I think
chat.
if there's anybody who's you read over the letters, if that's in the record, and then I don't know, should they speak if they submitted a letter, kind of to move things along?
I would prefer to allow those who have not spoken or have not submitted a letter to speak because we are running.
Okay, so not to be argumentative, people who have submitted letters that we just heard, they're not going to speak. They're on the record right now.
Yeah, they're on record. Yeah.
Okay. So any
I
new
don't have
people?
anyone that has not already submitted testimony.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion then?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, did you ever cite the, Caitlin, did you ever cite the section? of the
So
county
yeah,
code?
so it would vote not to add the Marlboro Lodge, citing the county code and then the National Park Bulletin, how to apply the National Register criteria for evaluation because it doesn't meet criteria 1 or 2.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure that was in, and so we do have a motion that's going to be out there.
Well, I'd like to make the motion, Mr. Chairman, that we accept the staff recommendations, but within that motion, I would also like to thank Mr. O'Rourke for his efforts to save the guts of the building for reconstruction elsewhere. That is not often done, and I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And I'd also like to thank the Preservation Alliance.
Other
As they always do, they brought us a careful recommendation, but I move we accept the staff recommendation to decline it.
I
Okay,
second.
thank you. Is there a second, or is there further discussion from the
Second.
commission members?
It's Steve Meyer.
I'll second.
A second? No further discussion?
Yeah, I just had a question. Is there any evidence of whether Joshua Cockey was a member of the Odd Fellows?
I didn't find any evidence for this particular hall, but I'm not sure if that is the case for
Another hall.
another hall.
Okay. So it's inconclusive, no evidence found so far.
This property didn't have a lot of existing research done on it. So I was digging in a lot of places to find some information.
Thank you.
We have a motion.
This is Rob Brennan. I'd like to make just a comment.
Okay.
I think it's a great old building. It certainly has a lot of history. It's unfortunate that the nomination comes after the owner developer has done due diligence in terms of research and exploration of saving the building. And I think it behooves the preservation community to try to save buildings before they're threatened, before they're bought, before other plans are made, because nomination should not be used as a tool to prevent development. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any further discussion? We have that second pending.
Just also comment that this is the second nomination coming from the Preservation Alliance of Baltimore County, where part of the building is nominated rather than the whole of the building. And so I think I would just provide some comment to them that you may want to rethink how you're nominating buildings in the future, and look at the building as a whole, not just a particular part.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that second out there, Caitlin, since it's a public hearing, I suggest a roll call.
Sure, I'll go down the list. Ed?
I agree with the motion.
Right.
Yes.
John?
Yes, I agree with the motion.
Marina?
Yes, agreed.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Mr. Syed?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And Mitch?
Yes.
All right, that's all in favor, passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I know it was an hour and 20 minutes. So thank you, everybody, for hanging in there.
All right, moving on.
You have enough energy to carry on to the next
Yes,
item?
yes, I miss Taylor. All right, so agenda number 5 is the Clemens Property at 505 Subbrook Park in the Subbrook Park County Historic District. It's a contributing resource. So it's a proposal for a tax credit part 2 for HVAC on the first floor and for repair replacement of some elements of the wood porch. The homeowner seeking first is for installation of the air conditioning system on the first floor, which is very typical of for part 2 applications that we've had before. The second work item is various repairs to the front porch and the second story porch. There are areas where their wood has been rotten or missing, and work items include repairs and in-kind replacements where needed on portions of railings, posts, and the floor. The replacements will match the existing wood and in size, shape, and design. And the contractor completing the work is a local craftsperson. Posts will be replaced rather than repaired to confirm that there's no rot or risk for structural issues. One railing is missing on the side section that the homeowner is proposing to build a new railing that matches what already exists. Material dimension and design. In addition, the homeowner is proposing to create a gate within this railing. The gate will have a steel frame, but it will match the railing and material. While staff does not mind the installation of the gate, however, it's not a tax credit eligible item, and at the end in its part 3 application, it'll be itemized out of the application. And with exception of the gate, the staff is accepting those porch repairs being tax credit eligible as proposed. And staff's recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the HVAC installation and a certificate of appropriateness for the porch repairs and replacements, with the condition that the steel gate, framed gate, will be itemized out in the part 3 application. Mitch, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
I was going to ask you if you have to cite the authority.
Oh yeah, authority is citing our National Park Service Technical Preservation Guidance, Preservation Brief number 24, heating, ventilation and cooling historic buildings, problems and recommended approaches, and then citing preservation brief number 45, preserving wood historic porches, and our county code section 32201.
Thank you. Do we have the owner or applicant?
We do. He doesn't have any comments to make, but he's here to answer any questions if you have any for him of his work.
Fair enough. Is there discussion amongst the commission members?
This is Rob, like Brennan, wondering about the purpose of the steel gate.
All right, Mr. Carnes, I'm gonna unmute you.
Yeah,
hi, Mr. Carnes.
Yeah, it's actually a wooden. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually a wooden gate. It's where the steel is for the portions where the gate is actually hooked to the post itself. So it's a full wooden gate with metal, the iron rails that would hook the wood to the actual posts themselves. Other than that, it's an entirely wooden gate designed to match the rest of the railing. We were putting it in there because it's the way we would go from the porch, stepping into the backyard, as opposed to going around to the other side. So it was the reason we were going to add that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there steps there now?
There are steps on the front and the side. The way that the grading of the ground works is that the porch almost it's about a 6, maybe 4 to 5 inch, maybe 6 inches down off the backside where the gate would go. But it leads directly almost into the backyard level.
You're not adding any steps.
No, no.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we worked with the craftsman to say, look, I want it to look like an existing railing all the way around. So that was the intent of trying to build it that way.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? If there's no further discussion?
I move to follow to approve it based on the staff's recommendation.
Could I ask one question? With the clarification of the gate is wooden, does that make it eligible or no? And I'm just asking for clarification.
No, the gate in itself, the whole portion of the gate is not tax credit eligible. If you weren't doing the gate, the entire railing
Understood.
would be tax credit. Yeah.
Okay, I just need to have him itemize that out if it gets approved. Is that it?
Yeah, we'll do that. And yeah, it's fine that it's improved in this, but when you submit your Part 3 application, you'll itemize everything, and then that could be itemized out, so it won't be.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, it's made a motion. Is there a second?
This is Rob Brennan. I'll second it.
Thank you, Rob. Caitlin, would you like to do a roll call?
Sure, I'll go down the list. Ed.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Marina.
Yes.
Phoebe.
Yes.
Mr. Syed.
Yes.
Ray. Rob.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
And Mitch. Mitch.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all in favor, passes.
Like the motion passes. Our next item for discussion.
So this is the Bear property at 4607 Prospect Avenue in Linden County Historic District. It's a non-contributing structure. The proposal it has 3 parts. The first part is lowering a wood privacy fence and relocating the gate, installation of 2 split rail style fence, and then the construction of the wood lean-to shelter in the rear yard. The first request is lowering a 24-foot section of a 6-foot wood privacy fence, which is on the south side of the property, and they're proposing to lower it to 42 inches and relocate the existing double gate from the front of the building elevation to be in line with the rear building elevation line, and it's going to be staying at 6 feet. This is in order to satisfy a Board of Appeals opinion and order. Other than that, there are no changes to the remaining of the fence in the rear yard. The site plan shows the locations where the location of the fencing to be lowered and where the gate will be relocated to. The second work item is a request to install a new 2-rail split rail fence with a height of 42 inches between the adjoining driveways at 4607 and 4609 Prospect Avenue. The fence is proposed to be 24 feet long and will create a barrier between the driveways. The fence will not go all the way to Prospect Avenue. While LPC generally does not approve of fences in the front yards, and our design guide states fences should be located at or behind the front facade line of a historic structure. Staff is in support of this proposal since it's a non-contributing building, and the split rail fence will break up the amount of asphalt paving and provide a barrier between the 2 properties. The third work item involves a request to construct a 12 by 12 lean-to shelter in the rear yard. The shelter will be located in the same location as a previously existing lean-to shelter, which was demolished a couple of years ago. The new lean-to shelter is proposed to be pressure-treated wood with a metal roof, and its tallest will be 15 feet, and it will slope down towards the privacy fence. The structure will not be attached to the home or fence and will have no footings or concrete base. The sample photo shows the design of the proposed structure. Staff is accepting of the design and materials as proposed. However, no additional plans were submitted. So staff asked the commission to discuss if they would like to see any additional plans for this lean-to structure. Staff's recommendations would be to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for work item number 1 as proposed. Issue a notice to proceed for work item 2 as proposed, and vote not to issue a certificate of appropriateness for work item number 3, requesting more detailed plans. Citing our Baltimore County's historic design guidelines, the fences and landscapes, page 4, and Baltimore County Board's Appeals opinion and order, case number 19342 SPHA, and our county code section 327403 and 327405.
Thank you, Caitlin. You know that since this had some zoning history, went to the Board of Appeals, and I think there was some maybe some issues between neighbors or whatever. So when we hear from the owner or applicant, and if there's testimony from neighbors, people joining the property, I don't want this to get into like property line disputes. Somebody's over my property, and it's not our purview or whatever. So I just want to make that clear for anybody who's talking.
Yeah, so yeah, the property owner is online if you have any questions or clarification for any of the work items.
Do we have anyone else that wants to speak?
Anybody else patched in?
No, I don't have. I have the property owner Donna Barrier. I'm muted if you want to say something to the commission, or if the commission has any questions for her.
Nobody's asked to speak in the chat either. This is Jennifer.
Okay.
Yeah. Donna, you're unmuted.
Am I muted?
You're unmuted. Yeah.
Okay, I just had a quick question about the number 3 item. And will I be able to get in touch with you to find out what the detailed plans are that you're requesting for that?
Yeah, if the commission would like to see those, yeah, I will. I can be in touch with you tomorrow to let you know, but they haven't made a motion yet, so.
Okay.
Well, I agree. We do need drawings. We need to see a plan view on the site, how it relates to the site and to the neighbor's property line. And I'd like to see elevations of at least 2 sides, maybe 3 sides of the building.
I would agree with Ed. This is Rob. It's considered an accessory structure, so there will be certain zoning and permit requirements for that type of structure.
Zoning requirements, no higher than 15 feet in height, no closer than 2.5 feet to the property lines. Cannot make up.
We lost you, Rob.
That was Mitch, actually. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have identified myself. So we're agreeing that we want to see plans for the accessory structure. Is there a motion for the other items?
Well, I move that we accept staff's recommendations on all 3 items as I can read it. Vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for work item number 1 as proposed. Issue a notice to proceed for work item number 2 as proposed. Not issue a certificate of appropriateness for work item number 3, and request more drawings and plans of the proposed structure.
Thank you, Rob.
Second.
Second?
Second, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Caitlin, how about a roll call?
Sure. Ed,
Yes.
Marina,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Mr. Syed,
Yes.
Ray, Rob, Steve,
Yes.
and Mitch.
Yes.
All right. All
Looks
in
like the
favor?
motion, looks like the
Yep,
motion
the
carries.
motion carries. All right. And Ms. Bear, I will be in touch with you tomorrow and give you some examples of the types of plans that we'll be looking for. All right, moving on. Item agenda 8 is the Brooks property at 3609 Blackstone Road in Fieldstone, County Historic District, and this is a infill construction. So the homeowner is seeking approval to amend the elevation drawings previously approved by the commission and an ex post facto approval for field modifications. At our last meeting on September 9th, the commission approved most of the modifications, but required the homeowner to make changes to the siding on the front elevation and remove the 2/2 windows and install original approved 6/6 windows in their place. The homeowner has made the siding changes as requested on the plans, and will be making those changes. The homeowner is seeking an alternative option to address the windows. The homeowner would like to install grids on the existing windows on the front elevation to make them 4/4 and leave the 2/2 windows on the left, right, and rear elevations as installed. The homeowner provided photos of 4/4 windows that exist within the district, and those were included in your meeting materials packet. While the modifications should have come to the LPC prior to being made in the field, staff finds the proposal to be a sufficient compromise. The 4/4 is more consistent with Fieldstone than the 2/2 style and can be found on multiple homes throughout the district. The windows and grids are all black, so they aren't as visible. Staff encourages the commission to discuss this proposal and/or other options that may satisfy the commission's requirement without requiring the homeowner to remove any of the installed windows. Staff's recommendation is to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of 4/4 interior grids on the front elevation, and issue a certificate or issue a notice to proceed for the installation of the 2/2 windows installed on the left, right, and rear elevations as completed. Citing Baltimore County Historic Guidelines, additions and infill, and County Code Section 327-403.
Okay, Caitlin, do we have the owner or applicant present with us tonight?
Yes, Mr. Brooks is online. Give me 1 second. All right, Mr. Brooks, you're unmuted.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you for having me.
So what would you like to explain, the reason for the changes and everything?
Well, so for the, I guess, previous our last meeting, this was something that was kind of discussed. We had the issues with the 2/2 not fitting the neighborhood. So, walking through and just finding other homes, I did see that the 4/4 was comparable. Even my next door neighbor has them. And so, I thought that would be a great compromise, and I would still be giving, the community exactly what's already there. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Is there a discussion with commission members? Or any questions to the applicant?
No questions.
No questions at all? Do we trying to give somebody a chance? Do we have a motion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Caitlin, if you put it up on the screen, I'll.
Oh, sorry.
I'll see the motion. So I'll make a motion to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of black 4/4 interior grids on the front elevation, issue a notice to proceed for the installation of 2/2 windows installed on the left, right, and rear elevations as completed, citing Baltimore County Historic Guidelines, additions and infill pages 4 through 7, County Code Section 327403.
Thank you, Rob. Is there a second?
This is Kachub Sayed, second.
All right, thanks, Mr. Syed.
Thank you. Let's do a roll call real quick.
Sure. Ed,
Yes.
Marina, you just muted yourself.
Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay.
What was that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay. Did you say yes? Sorry, I think there was some delay from when you unmuted it and you said it.
I said yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Phoebe,
Yes.
Mr. Syed,
Yes.
Ray, Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and then Mitch.
Yes.
All right, that is yeses for everybody, so the motion carries. All right, Mr. Brooks, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow and get you all squared away with
All right.
everything.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good night.
thank you. Have a good evening. All right, moving on. All right, we have the Altbach and Homan property at 1018 Windsor Road in Suburb Park County Historic District, which is a contributing resource. And it's a proposal for in-kind replacement of asphalt shingle roof. The homeowners are proposing to replace their existing asphalt roof with a OC true definition duration asphalt shingle roof. There's a note on the estimate from American Build and additional details about sections that where the roof ties into the wood siding in multiple sections additional information that was provided to staff via email. The homeowners explained that this note is specifically for where the roof meets the current wood siding, as seen on the photos that are on the slide. And in order to apply the step flashing property, contractor may have to remove the trim board of the roof and siding meet. In some spots, the contractor may need to cut back the siding and install new trim board. And then the trim board that is currently painted 2x4s. The homeowners communicated that the contractors can install wood and cap with PVC coated aluminum or paint the wood to match what is currently on the home. Staff has no issues with the roof and recommends approval. And as for the trim pieces, if they require replacement, that it should match in kind for what exists. Or it could be a cementitious product like a hardy plank, because the area is on the roof difficult to maintain and not very visible from the right of way. That would be an appropriate alternative and would remain consistent with our guidelines. And since the location of the signage, and also just to make a suggestion that if leaving like a space between the siding and the roof, like the photo on the screen, that will help keep water from having constant contact with the siding if it's resting right on the roof. So recommendation is to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness with the condition that the trim board be wood or a cementitious product such as a hardy plank rather than a PVC, citing Baltimore County Design Guidelines for roofs and County Code Section 327403.
Thank you, Caitlin. Is the owner applicant with us tonight?
I do not see their name online.
Is there a discussion amongst commission members? I'm giving you 3 seconds.
The flashing should be if the roof is a gray brown. It should be a brown flashing. The gutters and downspouts appear to be white, so you don't want silver or white flashing, I don't think, if it's exposed, which would be typical. You wouldn't see that trim board cut into the siding like that.
Anybody else?
I agree with Rob.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll jump in. Caitlin, did you want to put it up?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was writing.
Okay. So I move that we vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness with the condition that the trim board, if used, be wood or cementitious product such as hardy plank rather than PVC. Citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines roofs, page 10, County Code section 327403. We recommend that if flashing is left exposed, that it be brown to better blend with the roof color.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
Second, Ed Horde.
Caitlin, can we have a quick roll call?
Sure. All right, Ed,
Yes.
Marina,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Mr. Syed,
Yes.
Scott, Ray. I mean Ray. Yeah, sorry, I was reading. It's late. Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and Mitch.
Yes.
So that's all. That motion carries. All right, moving on. So the next item is item number 12, Alms House, which is owned by the Baltimore County Public Schools. It's a final landmark number 45. So it's a proposal for the in-kind replacement of 10 wood basement windows. So the Baltimore County Public Schools is seeking approval to replace 10 44 by 28 free light wood awning windows in the basement of the Alms House. And they're proposing to replace in-kind with the gelled when Ara last pine windows. The windows that are proposed for replacement have some rotted sills and stiles. Though the photos, it appears that some of the deterioration is minor versus some is a little bit worse. And it is unknown if the windows are original or if they're like earlier wood replacements. I know that there was a fire in this building in the early 20th century. And staff appreciates that BCPS is proposing an in-kind replacement. And staff encourages the commission to discuss repair as an option, or if they would like more information about the windows and the various conditions. Otherwise, staff's recommendation would be to vote to issue a certificate of appropriateness for replacement as proposed, citing Baltimore County Historic Guidelines, windows and doors, and County Code 327403.
Caitlin, is there a representative from Baltimore County?
There is not.
Any discussion amongst commission members?
Pretty good. I'll make a motion. This is Steve. This is for the Alms House building in Cockeysville. This is for motion to issue a certificate of appropriateness to replace in kind 10 wood basement windows as per staff recommendation.
Steve, I'll second that. This is Rob.
Thank you. Quick roll call.
All right, Ed. You're muted, Ed.
Yes.
There you go. Yes, all right. Marina,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Mr. Syed,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and Mitch.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Moving on. Is this our last one? Yep, it's our last case. So this is the Richter property at 5161 Viaduct Avenue in Relay County Historic District. It's a non-contributing structure. They have two proposals, which is one is an ex post factor approval for a front concrete walkway, which is 40 by 4 feet wide. Staff recommends approval as proposed. As a note, homeowners did not realize that this was a work item required by LPC, but there is no code complaint on it. The homeowners just applied for review once they realized the mistake. And the second work item is construction of a 12 by 19 deck off the rear of the home, which will be accessed by an existing door from the kitchen. The proposal includes a wood frame deck with a composite decking flooring material, aluminum balusters with PVC handrails and posts, and then a wood staircase down to the backyard. Typically, all wood decks are preferred. That said, this is a non-contributing house, and the design guidelines do state that that as a rule, decks and patios do not contribute to the character of a property or its neighborhood. New decks and patios should ideally be located in the rear and designed in a manner that is compatible with the principle of structure and landscaping. The LPC is generally less stringent in its review of decks and patios because they are considered to be reversible. And that's from Design Guidelines of Fences and Landscapes, page 4. Keeping that in mind, staff recommends the deck be approved with condition that the handrail and posts be wood instead of PVC to remain more consistent with both previous approvals and the design guidelines, which call for that vinyl should not be used. So staff's recommendation is to vote and issue a certificate of appropriateness for the concrete walkway as completed, issue a certificate of appropriateness for the deck construction with the conditions that the following materials be used: that a composite material be used for the deck flooring as proposed, that the aluminum balusters be used as proposed, but then have wooden handrails and posts instead of the proposed PVC. Citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Fences and Landscapes, and County Code Section 327403.
Thank you, Caitlin. Do we have the owner or applicant with us this evening?
No, we do not.
We do not.
Yes, do not.
Any discussion amongst commission members? Going once, going twice. Is there a motion? I feel like I'm getting rushed, so that's why I'm doing that. I'm gonna be honest.
I'll make a motion. I move that we issue to.
Oh wait, I have a. Oh wait, here the homeowner is on. I didn't see him there.
We're about to approve it. Do they really want to talk?
Yeah, silence is golden.
All right, you're on mute. Oops, sorry, hold on, wrong person. Sorry, people keep leaving, so it like changed. Sorry, Mr. Richter, didn't see you there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments or anything?
Yes, just a question. You know, we designed the deck with the PVC, one because of the cost, and two because it matched the white trim of the house. And I was wondering whether, since it's a non-contributing structure, whether the committee would be willing to accept the vinyl, both for our budget, because wood may be prohibitively expensive for us on that deck, and also that I believe with white vinyl it would match the design elements of the house.
Thank you. Are we still ready to make a motion?
I'm ready to do a motion, but do we want to respond to him? Okay, I'll do a motion. I'd like to issue, I move to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the concrete walkway as completed, issue a certificate of appropriateness for the deck construction with the condition the following materials be used: a composite material for the deck flooring as proposed, aluminum balusters as proposed, but wooden handrail and post instead of the proposed PVC. That's citing Baltimore County Historic Design Guidelines, Fences and Landscape, page 104, County Code Section 327-403.
Thank you, Ed. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Steve.
Steve?
Yep.
Thank you, Steve. How about a quick roll call?
Right. Ed,
Yes.
Marina,
Yes.
Phoebe,
Yes.
Mr. Syed,
Yes.
Ray, Rob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and Mitch.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right. On to MHT and emergency tax credits. So the following tax credit was approved by staff because it had MHT Part 2 approval, which is the Davies property at 1102 Owella Avenue in the Owella National Register District. So they had a MHT approval for replacement of windows, replacement of French doors, and repair and placement of wood siding. So note that the siding repairs for this project is the only tax credit eligible work item under the county's program. So other items will not be eligible for the tax credit, but they were for the state, but not under our program. Anyway, other business, just a reminder that our November meeting will be scheduled for Wednesday, November 17th due to November 11th, which is the second Thursday, which is Veterans Day, and county offices are closed. And then just one final note on final landmarks and delisting. Just a refresher that in our county code, we do have some language for a process for delisting. I don't believe it has ever been used, but the process is very similar to that of a nomination, where a property owner has to petition the commission for delisting, and then they have to prove and provide evidence that, say, the landmark no longer meets the criteria for which it was landmarked for. Like, for example, like if a landmark suffered a severe fire, it was like a complete loss. Obviously, there wasn't anything left to salvage. Like, that would be an instance where like a delisting would be an appropriate option if they needed to demolish the rest of the structure or remove the debris or something like that. But other than that, there's no I don't know if it was ever been used in the past, but I just wanted to give a little refresher on that.
Can you clarify, Caitlin, that the
Sure.
word delisting is not actually in the code, that it
No,
is just
it says removal from.
Yes, removal from list if the original criteria were not applicable.
Yeah, delisting is just
yeah, I mean it's probably bad idea to use terms that aren't actually in the code.
Yeah. So removal from the list is the correct title. But anyway, just wanted to make a note on that. Other than that, does anybody else have any comments or questions or anything to discuss? Other than that, we can just need a motion to end.
Well, I would like to mention that we're in the middle of Architecture Month, and Doors Open Baltimore is underway with some events still to occur between now and the end of the month. So they're pretty well subscribed at the moment, but check it out. There's virtual and in-person tours.
Thank you, Rob. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Was that Steve the first one?
I was the first one.
All
We
right.
want a roll call on this?
No, I think
No roll call.
Unless
You want
anybody
to
wants.
drag this out a little longer?
Yeah.
You might get a hung jury, huh?
Yeah, you might.
Yeah.
I may want to stay on for another half hour. There's nothing good on TV tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Wait, you still have to do a vote.
Vote. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, great month.
Hey, you too, Mitch.
You too.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.
I believe they can. I don't.
सीमा का क्या बोरिंग था आज ऐसा बोर करे वाला उड़े तो बात इतना करी हुई अल्लाह